Hi,
Hey,
I'm Julia,
and I'm Amanda,
and this is Much Needed Advice.
a podcast for people who want to know what to do. Hi, listeners.
Hi, everyone.
This episode is a continuation of the previous episode with Scotty Hendrickson, a digital nomad we met less than 24 hours after arriving in Bali.
In part one, Scotty shared his story of how he made the leap from traditional corporate climber to professional globetrotter. If you haven't already, go ahead and listen to that episode first to hear his story.
In this part two, Scotty gets down to the specific practical advice that has kept him in business and alive while on the road.
Here are some of the things you'll learn in this episode. Ways to make money in other countries, how to make friends and find your tribe in a transient environment, tips for when you eventually feel homesick or pressure from others to rejoin the rat race, ew, and even the best hack for handling laundry so you can travel light for extended periods of time.
As always, listen till the end of the app for our Recs of the Week. This week, Scotty, Julia, and I share the best products for working remotely at a cafe, securing your apartment and belongings, and fending off new germs while traveling.
I quickly want to mention that in this episode, we talk about being aware of common crimes in different countries. And I wanted to be clear that all countries have crime and all countries have their unique safety issues. And we're not singling out the ones mentioned in this episode. We're just giving a few examples from Scotty's recent travels.
Yeah, every country has their unique safety concerns. For example, in the US, we have to be careful to not get shot in a Home Depot. So wish we had advice for that, but that's a little trickier, to be honest.
Yeah, we want to make sure you guys don't think that we are saying these countries are more dangerous than other countries. The whole point is just to be aware of where you are.
After you listen to this episode, please remember, if you're using Spotify, to click that follow button and give us 5 stars if you enjoyed the episode.
And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can also hit the follow button at the top right and give us 5 stars and even leave a review if you're inspired.
Can you tell us a story from your time of working remotely? Something silly or something unexpected or something funny?
Yeah. Oh, I have a lot of silly, unexpected things that have happened to me since I left. Okay. So super ignorant, never traveled anywhere on my own before. I decided I'm going to go to Tulum. I got to Tulum, and for the first 2 weeks, I really didn't know anybody. And so I'm just living in this little Airbnb alone. And I've got this concept in my mind that I'm just going to drink the tap water, because obviously the locals drink the tap water and I want to acclimatize to the environment. And so I'm making my coffee with it and I'm drinking it all day long. And I can't figure out why I'm really sick to my stomach all the time. So I finally go on my first Tinder date, who becomes my roommate. We ended up really hitting it off. We liked each other a ton. And so we decided that we weren't going to date. I was going to move in with her, and I moved in with her the next day.
That's so lesbian of you.
Totally U-hauled it, right? Yeah.
Let's not date. Let's just live together.
That's Tinder's new slogan.
It was actually my only online dating success story in all of my digital nomad time. But at some point I stand up and I go to the sink and I pour myself a glass of water. And she bats it out of my hand. She's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "The locals don't drink the tap water. Nobody drinks the tap water in this country." I basically made myself very, very sick for almost a month because of my ignorance.
There's something to be said for not totally throwing caution to the wind when you go to another country. You went to Colombia too, right?
Yeah.
When we went there, there's a lot of precautions that people advise you to take. Like, you should always travel with kind of a bodyguard. You should have a personal driver that you know. Did you do stuff like that there? Or did you also kind of get captured by cocaine dealers?
Cartel.
We were a little loose in Colombia, I'd say, but we definitely took advantage of private drivers everywhere that we went. Men are very targeted in Colombia. White men are extremely targeted.
As they are everywhere.
Yeah.
Most of the world is
We're just
my
kidding.
oyster. There, though, they're like, that's money. So we did follow some precaution in Colombia. You lock your doors. You definitely lock your doors. Someone tried to get into my apartment in the time span that I let someone out to grab a taxi home. First, they tried to get in his taxi, and when the taxi drove off, they ran back and tried to get into my gate. So, there's some desperation there. I think one thing that I've learned and that I'm definitely compassionate about, like I had my phone stolen since I've been to Bali. I had it open on the back of a scooter, and it was ripped out of my hands on the back of the scooter here.
By someone driving by?
Yeah, ripping by on
On
a
a
scooter.
scooter?
Yeah, and it was open, so they had access to like my WhatsApp and all of my
credit
info.
card, your Apple Pay.
That's
and-
genius, because when they steal a phone and it's
don't call that
locked,
genius. It's scary. It was very scary,
But
But genius.
That's the whole iPhone thing, is when it's locked, it's pretty much useless. But if they can get it while it's unlocked, holy shit.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I had to call my office because it was a company phone, and they very quickly canceled my SIM card to stop them from two-factoring in. But I think the point I want to make there is, again, ignorant, had no idea. And then I tell people, and they're like, you didn't know? That happens all the time here. That's the number one thing you need to look out for in Bali, is they will steal your phone out of your hands off the bike at night. That's like when the streets aren't busy, they will target you, and then they will rip by on a straightaway and yank it out of your hands. Definitely a travel lesson that I've learned is like, learn what kinds of crime there are. I have some compassion to criminals. Like, COVID caused a lot of economic problems in this country, particularly in other places like Java. And so a lot of them are coming over here. There's a lot of desperation that was driven out of the global pandemic. And so I don't think people should steal. I don't think people should hurt other people, but I think it's important to have compassion for everyone and anyone, and not.
You understand why people do those things sometimes.
Don't make yourself a victim if you can avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah. We took some safety precautions. I bought some safety things for our hotel rooms and Airbnbs. Alarms and like extra lock kind of things that just secure everything more, because when you're staying in someone's house or staying at a hotel where all the staff can get into your room whenever they want, you just have to remember that people can come in if they want to. Mm-hmm. So if you don't want them to, there are things that you can get that helps with that. Yesterday, Amanda and I sat next to this guy who had the worst vibe. Like, my stomach turned upside down. He didn't even do anything, but it was just like, no.
Do you get that intuition where like you just feel someone's energy is ominous?
I like to think that I do a pretty good job of paying attention to what's going on around me. Certainly in Mexico, I have to credit the Mexican people in general. They're really beautiful, really friendly, but the cartel is everywhere. In some places, it's particularly scary. I had the police rob me in Mexico. So you can kind of like start to detect these sort of types of situations, and typically you can avoid them. When I was living in Mexico, the rule was like, all right, don't fight with the cartel and don't join the cartel, and then the cartel is typically going to leave you alone. And that was generally true.
Join the cartel.
If you don't want a problem with them, those
It's
were the
tempting, but
Now that would be a funny story.
Well, it's like, how did you make money when you went to Mexico?
Oh, yeah.
I started my digital nomad career as a drug trafficker.
The one time I accidentally joined a cartel. Oops. Should have Googled it.
I saw an open job on Craigslist.
So, another thing I would recommend for long-term nomads and travelers is travel with a backup phone, travel with an eSIM that's ready to go, and make sure on your backup phone it's not sitting there unopened, that you've actually loaded your ID, your iCloud, or your whatever your Android profile is, that you've two-factored in all of your social apps so you can get a hold of people right away, and that your phone is up to date enough that you can actually use an eSIM. Because again, on this trip here, I was like, I've got a spare phone. I'm just going to toss it in my bag. And I didn't checked to see that it was like an iPhone 6 Plus and it didn't accept an eSIM and it couldn't download the latest operating system. And then in an emergency situation like I was in, it proved to be a very futile tool. As a digital nomad, your toolkit is like your most important thing, right? Being able to get online, being able to contact people is how you're going to make your money and how you're going to have your lifeline to your family.
I think it's good to have whatever version of a backup of as many things as possible and in different places. Like have a picture of your passport on your phone or on your second phone. Or like I've split up my cash where some of my cash is with me, some of my cash is where we're staying. Like if I get robbed when I'm out, I have one credit card that's still at the hotel. Like split things up so someone can't just take everything you have in 1 second.
Yeah, if there's someone you know or you trust, photograph all of your passport type information and send it to them so that they have a copy of it. It's probably even more secure than having it on your phone. If you're going to have it on your phone, have it in a locked folder on your phone, because that was one of my panics. And I had to call the embassy and be like, hey, by the way, this person has access to my phone, my passport, and all my information are in my photos. So I don't know what they can do with it.
We talked about that on an earlier episode, the locked folder of documents on the phone.
Super important. Yeah, you can do it as a locked document or a locked note, but double locking your key documents and not just having them as tagged as favorites or whatever is another lesson I've learned the hard way that I would love to give some advice if advice is needed to someone.
Much needed, in fact.
Much needed. Yeah. I really beat myself up about those things. But when they're over, they're over. You just have to like find ways to move on and then get back to enjoying your life and getting back in the moment. You know, those things are in the past because that's why you're out here. You're not out here to like fill it with new regrets. You're here to fill it with beautiful moments. And one really beautiful moment that happened to me that really changed my life was I'm sitting on the beach in Tulum and I meet this woman. Her name's Mariam, and we're hanging out through a mutual friend. I'd finally made some friends. The next day she texts me and she says, what are you doing next week? And I was like, I don't have any plans next week. Want to come to Costa Rica? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. So she's like, all of my friends are going to this big party in Costa Rica. I think you're cool. I'd love for you to meet them. So I packed everything up that I owned, bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. I met all of her friends. That's where I met Paul, who I'm living with here in Bali. That's where I met some of my very best friends. And having myself be accessible and open to say yes. Say yes. If you can say yes, you're going to create a really beautiful future for yourself. We all stay in touch. We've been to cities all around the world together. Some of them are meeting in Lisbon right now, and they're in Mexico City, and that's why I'm here. And that day always sticks out to me as one of the coolest days when I started to realize that a lot of the limitations that I put on what was possible for my life were dissolving, and like this whole new boundless reality was like unfolding around me.
Yeah, I think you're right. Saying yes is how you build the life of your dreams. And I hope we can manifest seeing you in another country one day.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
We're dreaming of Dubai next.
And Lebanon, my motherland that I haven't been to.
What do I got next on my list? I have some close friends who are moving to Portugal, so I would really like to see them, and then Argentina and Bolivia. So that's where I'll be spending the winter, just sort of doing a month in each spot and seeing some new spots and doing some mix of tourism and remote work.
That's great. How fun. What a fun life.
I woke up one day after thinking my life was totally over and was like, this life is better than the one that I had dreamed of. Suddenly found myself living with this amazing professor from NYU, having the most incredible conversations in this penthouse in Mexico City. And I was looking around being like, how is this possible? Now that this is my everyday, what else is out there that could be possible for me? So I think being willing to see that you can say no to things, develop boundaries, you can say yes to yourself, and you can create momentum. And then one day you're going to wake up further along some journey that you didn't even think was possible, and getting do a podcast on this rooftop in Ubud in Bali. You know, it's pretty great.
I just want to touch on finances, because I know we have listeners from all over the world, but a lot of them are in the US. And I know a lot of people think traveling is really expensive, but your money can go so much farther in so many other countries. And I think it's just an important thing to point out that you don't have to be extremely privileged financially in order to travel. Like, for example, Amanda and I are staying in beautiful villas with a pool, our own rooms and bathrooms and all that for $34 a night. And you can get things for even less than that. So if you feel like that's your biggest barrier, like, there's a way.
And if you want more tips on how to travel cheaply, go to episode 1.
Oh, yeah. Our first episode was about how to travel on the cheap. Yeah.
I know people who were living on $750 a month US budgets, including all of the rent and food, even in Tulum, which is a really expensive city. And over here in Asia, it's even cheaper. I'm also staying in a $32 a night spot. The scale is so much different. Everything's expensive in Canada and the United States, whereas here you can eat for $5 to $10 a day, delicious local home cooked food. The other thing that made a huge difference to me financially was getting rid of all my stuff, selling everything, abandoning my lease, and allowing my income to be focused on wherever I was in the moment instead of tied to something back home. My friends who I've met on the road, they'll either have condensed it all into a very small storage locker, keep it at their parents' house, find some way to really, really downsize and get rid of all of those other responsibilities and burdens financially. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is putting like one foot in and one foot out. For me, the mistake that I made was after about a year on the road, I kind of felt ungrounded, and I wasn't sure what to do next. And I was getting a lot of pressure from my family. Oh, you need to come back home. My friends, he put me in a wedding party as like a ploy. I love the guy. He loves me too. But it was like, you're in my wedding party, so you have to come home sort of thing. And people are going to put a lot of pressure on you to revert to the old way of doing things. They're going to say things like, how long do you think before you give this up? How long before you get bored of it or tired of it? Or you're never going to be happy that way. Like,
when are you going to settle down?
Have you gotten it out of your system?
Yeah. Because they don't believe in the possibility that it could be a lifestyle.
And it's totally a lifestyle. It's totally an achievable lifestyle today that it may not have ever been in the past. But at one point, I moved back home and I got a lease. And this place has been sitting empty. As soon as I got back, I spent like 3 weeks there and I was like, I'm out of here. I can't do this. So I went to Miami, then I went to Mexico, then I went to Colombia, and then I went home for another 2 weeks and I was like, nope, still hate it. Or, I shouldn't say I hate it, but I'm just so much happier. I like myself this way, even though it's hard for other people. I haven't really successfully sublet my place out very much. And I just I'm counting down the days till that lease ends so that I can be free of that burden again. I think it can be tough though, at a certain point after you've been roaming the world for a couple of years and you're like, where is home? What is home? Home is a state of mind. Home is the security of knowing you're doing what you love. Home is the friendships that you cherish. Home is connection. Sometimes you might get into a spot where that's hard to see, but financial advice would be commit to it. Be courageous. Put your eggs in the basket. Go for a little Easter egg hunt somewhere. You're going to find all kinds of special little treasures and it's going to be worth it.
The key here too is getting the best of both worlds of having a US or Canadian income, but a Bali or Mexico cost of living. It's not like it's possible to get a job in Bali necessarily and then be able to live this way and enjoy all the perks.
Look outside the way that you think the world works. Once you get there, you're going to meet people who are going to say, I do this, or I do this. Internships for things that felt interesting to them, or shift work to sustain yourself. A lot of people, they do hybrid remote too. It's hard to be fully digital. Maybe you can take the months of the year you hate the most and start by negotiating with your business to say, I would love to not be here from October 15th to December 15th. I would like to try to work those 2 months remotely from somewhere. Start small, test the waters, or if I don't even think I can do it with a job right now, what if I just put $5,000 aside? I quit my job and I had no money in the bank when I moved. I just knew that there was nothing more important than finding a way to stay alive. And I just wasn't going to make it if I didn't make a change. And I think if you invest in yourself like that, the new opportunities to invest in yourself will arrive and you'll start to have a sense of self-worth, and that builds. It's got momentum behind it. And that would be, maybe that's a piece of advice if that's much needed for someone.
Yeah. Thank you, Scotty, for spending some time with us and hopefully inspiring our listeners to have the courage to believe in the possibilities that life has to hold for them.
There's something that we do at the end, which is called Recs of the Week, where we give one recommendation. It's usually a product or a service or something. Is there like one thing that in all your travels you've gone, everybody should buy this before they do that?
One is a portable second screen. If you're a digital nomad, I have this awesome 17.5-inch portable second screen that just connects by USB-C. It's called a BIMAWAM. It's totally awesome and makes all my workflows a lot easier and setting up at the cafe a lot better. Trying to do everything that I do on a small laptop screen was really tough. And the other thing that I really recommend, because I know like half this conversation was about finding yourself and enjoying living life. I just read a book by Young Pueblo called Clarity and Connection. And it's so beautiful. It's so inspiring. It's a really easy read. It really felt like it was speaking to me and might speak to anyone who has been through some hurt, is ready to let go and grow and embrace connection again and embrace connecting with themselves. And I would recommend anyone read that book. It just uplifted me and made me feel a lot lighter.
Great Rex.
Yeah. Those
Wow.
are my Recs
He's a
now.
pro at this.
I know, he should have a podcast.
I'm blown away.
There's a lot of tools that slowly make your life easier, from like packing cubes to cable bags to just all of this little stuff that helps keep your miniature life organized. But those two especially.
I have a personal question that we may or may not keep in.
Go for it.
How do you handle laundry? Like having,
This is too personal.
like,
No.
carrying not that many clothes with you, but still having something to wear.
Okay, today is a hilarious day that you say that, because today is laundry day. I'm wearing a swimsuit as my bottom half because that's the only bottoms I have left. What's amazing actually in all these other countries that you go to is they wash, dry, fold, iron your clothes for $5. The spot that I'm staying at, I just handed them my bag of all of my clothes because everything's dirty right now. And in the morning, it will all be pressed and on my bed, and it's 20,000 IDR. So that's about 80 cents a kilogram. So like $1.50 a pound it costs to wash, dry, fold here.
Those so many currencies and pound and weights.
That's another thing you will get great at is
The mental math of conversion.
converting currencies and converting metric to imperial or whatever system.
Americans aren't good at that whole mindset because we just think we're the standard.
We're like, no, everyone adjust to us.
Everyone speaks English and everyone should use like 12 inches as a foot. It's all so stupid.
Fahrenheit's the only one I can't figure out. The rest I've got pretty good at doing very
That's
quickly.
right, because you're Canadian.
But the Fahrenheit, I'm everywhere else in the world uses Celsius.
No, it's because you're Canadian.
American exceptionalism.
Because your accent's the same as ours, so I do forget that. You're not
West
from
Coast.
the US.
West Coast Canadian.
Yeah.
And they do have fluff and folds in the US. A lot of people don't know, which is the same service, not as cheap. But when I used to tour a lot, and I would only be home for like a few days, I would drop off like pounds of laundry and it would come back folded so fucking flat.
And then you could just pop it right into your suitcase
I'm like,
again.
I don't have time to fold a million things right now.
I've never folded a thing.
It all just lives in the
Everything's
bathtub.
just a pile in the bathtub if it's dirty, and on the floor in my bedroom if it's clean.
Oh, hotel rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. My recs of the week are some little things to beef up your security wherever you're staying. One is these things that look like door stoppers. So you put it under the door, and this only applies if the door opens in to the room or to the house. But if somebody opens the door when this thing is pushed under and turned on, it sets off this crazy loud alarm, which should at least deter somebody or wake up your neighbors, and definitely wake up you. So that's just a little added thing where you know someone can't just sneak in the middle of the night, at least not through the door. The second one is because we're in Bali, there's a lot of sliding glass French doors versus traditional doors that open in and out. So I bought these. They're like zip ties, except they're steel and they have a combination lock on them. So I just run it through like the two handles of the sliding glass door. It's just an extra thing where someone can't just pick the lock and open the door. There's a steel zip tie on it. So you can never be too careful as a woman, both in the US and outside of the US.
Or as a white man, apparently.
Yeah.
Because they're most likely to have money.
Right.
Just a big victim down there. No, I really like your recommendation. You could use one of those to tie up your bags in your room.
Wait, that's a really good idea. Okay, I'm going to do that. Because I've been just keeping like my important stuff in my suitcase and then locking the suitcase in the room. Because I'm like, I don't know who wants to drag this 50-pound suitcase through the rice paddies and who doesn't even know what's in it. But still, you could lock it to something in your room.
They put
Thing on
that
a
suitcase on the back of a scooter and had no problems on our way in.
Yeah.
So.
Even if you are like at the airport or at a hotel or working somewhere and you don't have someone to watch your bag while you go to the bathroom or order your coffee, or if you rent a bike and need to lock up your helmet or the bike, it's just a good thing to have. It packs easy. You can use it in a million different ways.
All right. And then we're all going to give 2 recs today.
Hey.
I have 2 different supplements to recommend for traveling and staying well, because you don't want to be wasting time sick or have to have a long recovery time when you get home, especially with long flights and things. My first recommendation is called Host Defense My Community. It's an immune booster based on mushrooms.
I love mushrooms. Not to eat.
Mushrooms are good for so many things. I enjoy even eating regular ones in my omelet.
Wow.
Not Julia, though.
I don't like to eat them, but I'll take every form of mushroom supplement that exists.
We got to try the magic kind soon. And then my other supplement recommendation is grapefruit seed extract, which is a natural antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal supplement. And it's great, especially if you're going to a place where you shouldn't drink the tap water. And you find you had a Charlotte moment in the Sex and the City movie.
If it's your first time on the road anywhere, whether washing the vegetables or preparing the food with stuff that's not the quality of water you might be used to, you're going to get sick at first. And I have definitely developed a very iron stomach over the last 2 years. I have not seen or dealt with any kind of belly situation here. But I know if you're not used to it, highly recommend a defense mechanism, especially if you're coming for 2 weeks. You don't want to waste, 48 of those hours unhappy.
Yeah, it's a good safeguard. It gives you some peace of mind too.
Yeah, and it might not work 100% of the time, but
We're not doctors.
oh yeah,
As we like to remind our
also
listeners.
ask your doctor before you take it in case it interacts with anything.
I can give you the medical advice to not drink the tap water. I can tell you definitely what not to do.
All right, I think we did it.
Thanks, Scotty.
Julia, Amanda, thank you for having me on your podcast.
How fun.
Yeah, it was very novel. One of the things I love the most is getting to have novel experiences. And this was my first one. I've never done a podcast before of any shape, form, or size. So thank you for introducing me to something new today.
You're a natural.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. You should literally have a podcast, but one step at a time before I become your manager. Well, we can always podcast with him remotely in the future too.
Yeah.
Bump into you somewhere else. We could do a check-in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we think you should do. What do you think? Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you need advice? DM us on Instagram at much.needed.advice or email us at muchneededadvicepod@gmail.com.
Bye.
How do we become one voice?